Chapter 39, The System of the Apocalypse World. If a normal human had been jumped like this, they would probably panic and react instinctively, defending their facial area from whatever was attacking. However, Dante, who had almost 4 times the agility and dexterity of the average human, was not even fazed. He simply reached out a hand to grab before him and captured the shadow that was leaping at him, revealing a cat. It was a relatively small cat with a very human-like expression on its face, showing fear and shock. Its body and fur were quite thin and sparse, probably due to malnutrition. Dante could even see parts of its ribs through its torso. It had reddish-white fur and bright blue eyes that were as expressive as that of a human. Dante looked the cat up and down, then marveled slightly. A cat like this was rare even in the eternal universe and could fetch a high price. But in a wasteland like this where life and death were not guaranteed, it was only a pest and a burden. Dante looked beyond the cat to the room and saw that the desk area had a small next where the cat likely made its home. He then glanced at the cat and walked over to the desk before putting it down. Despite its fear, it showed visible surprise at being spared and then sat down cleverly. "This is probably your territory and home. So you attacked me because you thought someone was intruding?" Dante asked the cat. It seemed to understand his speech and nodded. Dante had assumed it could understand him because there was a forum post about mutated pets in the wasteland world. Some animals would end up like the mutated dogs from before, while others would end up like this cat. One became a monster archetype, and one became a pet archetype. "No problem. I'm your tenant from now on. I have been assigned this residence, so I will be staying here infrequently from now on for the next 30 days. You're free to do as you did before I came. I won't disturb you, and you won't disturb me. Is that agreeable?" Dante proposed with a smile. The cat hesitated and nodded. It was aware that it was only safe because it was living in human space, and after seeing that it was not dangerous, the guards and residents did not mind it. In theory, Dante was the true owner of the territory now and it should leave, but it had gotten used to life here, and moving had its own dangers. It was far from the only mutated pet in this encampment. Since Dante offered it a chance to stay, it should be grateful, but Dante noticed its hesitation and sighed inwardly. It turns out that the post's details and explanations about the pet system were true. Most of the students who descended would receive a pet like this through various organic means. It was to help with mental health despite being in such a world. Most people didn't mind and kept them around, because while they were not useful for combat, they were certainly lovable mascots that could relieve stress. So the cat was hesitating because it wanted to be taken care of. Hunting in this encampment was hard, and the competition with other stray cats was fierce. If it could rely on this human, its days of suffering would be over. Dante could guess what the cat was thinking from its expression alone. It seemed like a natural thought process, but he knew the overseeing quantum artificial intelligence that managed this world was simply influencing its thoughts subtly to fit its programming. Ads by Pub Future. Dante patted the cat on the head. "Just be good, and I will try to see if I can manage to take care of the two of us." The cat's eyes lit up and nodded happily. It meowed cutely, and Dante couldn't help but smile. He wasn't particularly a pet guy, and neither was his family since they had no pet at home, but he was not an animal hater either. As long as the cat remained cute and obedient, he did not have a problem. Dante then inspected the residence and saw that it had 1 bathroom, 1 kitchen, 1 living room area, and 1 bedroom. All the areas were relatively clean if not for a small layer of dust on them that showed how long it had been since this place was formerly occupied. Dante spent some time cleaning the room properly using the materials supplied and then left the cat in the house. His body in the game was stronger than average thanks to absorption, but it was still subject to basic needs. In other words, he was hungry. The encampment was not necessarily a fully militarized outpost, but more like a heavily guarded town. It had all the facilities necessary, a market, a place for entertainment and gathering, as well as a law enforcement area. Dante already did his research and knew about the current used in this world. Since society had collapsed, the paper currency backed by nothing was naturally worth what it actually was, nothing. Rather, there was a mixture of 2 different currencies, one that was high tier and one that was average. The average currency was gold chips, square-like coins that were very thin and had some simple markings on them. They were usually minted by the administrative forces of each city and distributed. It was a worldwide currency that could be used anywhere. Ads by Pub Future. Each player was provided 10 gold chips on descent, and there were many ways to earn more with superpowers at their beck and call as long as they could survive the initial descent and reach the town or city. The second and much more precious currency was the mutation cores. This was a beast core-like substance that existed in the body of all rank F and above mutated monsters. The mutation cores were much more valuable and were ranked by their quality. F rank was worth 100 gold chips, and every rank after that was multiplied by 10 in terms of value. Any and every mutated beast would drop such things, so Dante had 5 from the mutated two-headed dogs. To natives, these cores were very useful in that they were the source of the anti-mutation and anti-radiation drug in Dante's backpack. The big pharma, in this world that had risen from the ashes, desperately desired this resource, which was why it was worth so much. However, for players, if they sold their mutation cores, they would be seen as idiots. Because, as you could imagine, the only way to advance one's superpower was to use the mutation core. 10 F-rank mutation cores allowed an F-rank superpower to advance to E-rank. 10 E-rank mutation cores allowed a superpower to advance to D-rank, and so on. So the mutation core was a hotcake for natives, as it was necessary to ensure their survival in this irradiated world, and players needed it because it directly increased their martial might and survivability, allowing them to harvest more supercoin at the end. Dante only had 5, so he couldn't advance absorption. He couldn't advance quantum entanglement even if he wanted to because its power was capped at what he actually had. Only the system-given superpower was bound by these rules. Dante found an eatery that was quite populated and went in. He ordered a rice dish that was basically like Chinese fried rice, which comforted him. It seemed like no matter the world, fried rice as a fast food dish would always persist. After finishing his meal, he bought some pet food from the marketplace and went back to his residence. In this time, he had noticed many students who were bustling about, looking motivated and determined. After all, they had 30 days and a goal to make supercoin to enhance themselves in reality, so they were full of sprightly steps. It was the natives who rather moved slowly and uncertainly, their expressions heavy as if they did not know what tomorrow would bring. The contrast was so great that it provided an easy identification for both parties and also seemed like something that could lead to a deep philosophical discussion. However, Dante was not in the mood for anything like that. When he returned to his room, he opened the pet food and placed it before the enthusiastic cat, who was inches from jumping about in excitement. When it saw Dante glance at it with amusement, it immediately coughed with embarrassment and began licking its paw, trying to act nonchalant and dignified. Dante rolled his eyes and placed the food in a bowl for the cat before going to lie down on his bed. He immediately began to have a nap in order to relax after that chase from that E-rank withering, irradiated zombie. His physique was definitely superior, but he did not have any plans to go out yet, so resting was for the best. When he woke up, he would take his next steps. Chapter 40 decked out and ready to kill as naps go. Dante had one that was very banal. It didn't do much to refresh him, but it also did alleviate the building stress and tension. Since he had dropped into this world, he had slept about 4 times over the course of 2 or so days. It was either he was very easily fatigued or there was a severe underestimation by the normal people about how tiring dangerous scenarios were. When he got up, he saw that the cat was asleep in its cradle, purring silently. Beside it was a few empty cans, showing how it had gorged itself well before going into a food coma. Dante shook his head and washed up a little, but since he only had 1 pair of clothes, he couldn't wash them clean. He just wore them as is and left his residence, noticing that it was finally daytime. Dante used the system to check the remaining time on his gene enhancement and saw that he had 4 hours remaining. As for his class with Xue Bing, there were 12 hours remaining, so he had time. He then went to the marketplace to look for weapons. He was about to head into the wild, so he had to make preparations and make sure he did not end up as pathetically as before. Luckily, this world had both superhumans and normal people, so society did not retardedly regress into using only cold weapons. There were guns of all types for sale, and they were the most preferred weapon for anyone and everyone. Dante had a limited amount of gold chips after spending some on food and some necessities for the residents. He had about 8 gold chips remaining, and even the cheapest pistol available was over 50 gold chips. He sighed and pondered his choices. With 5 mutation cores, he could sell them and easily arm himself with suitable weapons and armor before heading out to make up the losses. Even though selling mutation cores was seen as dumb, it would be even more foolish to hold on to them and then go out there with barely enough supplies or weapons. Was he supposed to rely on some cosmic luck to prevent him from dying like a dog? Not to mention that he did not easily believe in such things. It was not in his nature to take such a course of action. The other course of action was to follow the guide in the forums and head to the city militia outpost to sign up as a superpowered warrior for the city. They would give you a basic starter package for joining in exchange for taking 30% of all your spoils for your 30 days lifespan. All the thing Dante wanted they would provide for free. Most players who descended in safety and did not get a single kill would choose this option since they had a short lifespan anyway, and they didn't have anything to trade. Those who were lucky like Dante and harvested a few who naturally auction them and then get their own gear. That way all their future gains would be for them alone, and they would not be pestered by any faction. Dante naturally chose to head to the marketplace's center, which was highlighted by a large four-story building with many people coming and going from within. This was the city's official armory, and you could buy anything you needed here, from mutation cores, to drugs to heal or cure ailments, to weapons, armor, and whatnot. There was a forum post that advised all new players to only sell their mutation cores to any city's armory first during their initial descent. It was too easy to be tricked or duped by players or natives, and even be robbed by them. Ads by pub future-only pros who had descended multiple times should do such a thing because they would naturally know their way about. Dante wasn't going to act like he knew better and quietly went to a counter within the shop and placed his 5 mutation cores down. The man seated behind the reinforced glass smiled happily and inspected the cores using some special de-ice. Hearing a pleasant beep and seeing a green light on all of them, his smile became wider and he spoke to Dante in a rugged voice. 5F rank mutations cores. Their MSRP is 100 gold chips, but we're willing to pay 105 for each. Dante knew that this was not a really good offer. The 100 gold chips thing was the base price set by the various cities of the world, and most mutations cores sold for far higher than that, even at other shops. In direct trades, depending on the desperation of the buyer, one could even reach 150 gold chips. In auctions, they could easily reach 200. Offering 105 was not sincere, but the fellow was also trying to make a small profit and increase his margin in his daily report to the administration behind him. Not to mention that the reason anyone would sell here was for the safety, quality, and trustworthiness. Dante could afford to take a slight loss on this account because he was confident he could make more. Anyway, he shouldn't get attached to these things. Every mutation core or gold chip only served the purpose to increase his final score at the end of the 30 days. If they could be spent or bought at any price to even increase that score by 0.1%, then it was a big win. Dante accepted the offer and then from the same vendor, bought a Barrett M82 50 caliber sniper, 1 Kalashnikov, and 1 M4A1 carbine, 1 Desert Eagle, and 1 Colt 1911, all in mint condition. Ads by Pub Future, he bought a set of lightweight Kevlar armor called Sotnik. It was a Russian-developed super armor that was only released for a few years before disaster came. It was durable to the point where the wearer could even survive head-on assault rifles bullets and even anti-material sniper rounds. It came with a helmet that had some technological functions like comms, infrared, thermal vision, night vision, facial recognition, aim assistance, target mapping, and more. It also had a gas mask and a defibrillator as well as an internal medical distribution system that could pump adrenaline, morphine, or whatever you slotted into the suit right into your system in critical situations. Aside that, Dante bought a few bottles of anti-mutation, anti-radiation, food pills, healing syringes, and a lot of ammunition that he squeezed into his newly bought backpack. When Dante equipped everything, with the help of the salesman since this was complimentary service, he walked out of the armory wearing a full bodysuit that looked heavy despite being relatively compact already, with a backpack large enough to cripple a man. The vendor looked amused and slapped Dante on the back, but he remained steady. The vendor and other onlookers who were amused suddenly had their eyes flash when they saw that Dante could easily move with all that weight without feeling the pinch. They made speculations and assumed his superpower was the strength or enhancing type, which would make his current get-up sensible rather than short-sighted. After all of them had lived for a while and had seen many types of superpowered people, so those coming to do what Dante did were a dime a dozen. Of course, there were those with superpowers that did not enhance their strength who did this and fell over in tiredness after 2 steps, giving the onlookers at the time a good laugh. The vendor would usually shake his head and recommend them something else more suited for their build and superpower. After all, it did not benefit anyone for these superpowered people motivated to clean up the world of its filth to die. The harder the worker and the more successful they were, the more the natives benefited. If it wasn't because it would ruin the economy and cause them trouble, they would like to freely equip all superpowered fellows and toss them into the wild. Dante himself walked through the streets looking like a modern centurion, his already slightly tall build making him feel like a significant threat to all those who gazed upon him. He did not feel much of the weight as he walked, much like how holding a cup of water was not very hard. However, if you held that cup up for a while, your hand would begin to get tired. Dante surmised he could go about 30 minutes of walking before needing to rest until he increased his SDI further. As such, he marched straight out of the gates, bearing the shocked and respectful looks of the guards at the entrance. After all, he was well equipped and looked powerful, so they couldn't help but feel like he was mighty. Dante went right to the area where he had come from, which was covered in bushes and shrubs that lead into the forest area. His goal was naturally to see if that withering, irradiated zombie was still around, and then kill it, claiming its stats for himself.